It started because I was looking for somewhere quiet to sit with my thoughts, and because the university cafe had gotten too loud. The library was almost empty that afternoon. Dust moved in lazy lines through the light, the kind that makes you want to whisper even when no one's around. She was behind the counter, sorting through a stack of returned books like she was measuring time by their spines. A woman maybe in her mid-40s, dark hair tied low, glasses sliding down a little, sleeves rolled just enough to show the edge of a silver bracelet. I remember thinking she looked like someone who'd never hurry, no matter what the world asked of her. I came in every other day that week, pretending to look for books I didn't need. I'd stop at the desk and ask questions that didn't really require answers. "Do you have the next Murakami?" "We do," she said once, barely glancing up. "But it's out." I could have just left it there, but I said, "Guess I'll come back." And she nodded like that was fine, though I saw the corner of her mouth move. Not quite a smile, more like she'd just noticed something she didn't want to admit noticing. It became a pattern. She'd say little things like, "You always come around this time," or "You don't read much when you're here." And I'd answer, "I do, just not the books." That one earned me a quiet, measured look, long enough to make me fold the edge of my sleeve, suddenly aware of my own hands. There was something about her silence. It wasn't cold. It was careful, like she'd learned how to stay composed because feeling too much had once cost her something. Most people my age fill silence with noise. She didn't. She let it stay, made me feel like the pause between our sentences mattered more than the words. I started noticing things about her. How she'd tap her thumb twice before turning a page. How she'd press her lips together when thinking. Once, I saw her laugh quietly at a note left in a returned book. "Thanks for the company during finals." The sound was soft, and I wanted to ask what it felt like, being surrounded by stories, yet maybe not having one of your own anymore. One Thursday, I found a coffee cup left on the counter, still warm. Hers. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon. She came back from the stacks and saw me there. "You're not supposed to drink in here," she said. "Then you're breaking your own rule," I said, pointing at the cup. That was when she leaned a little closer, lowering her voice. "Be quiet." The words brushed the air between us, softer than they should have been. I didn't plan to answer, but something in me, something restless, said, "Then stop making me want to break rules." For a second, her breath caught. Just a fraction. Enough to make time feel fragile. Then she stepped back, almost like she'd remembered where she was. "You should check out a book," she said finally, "before someone thinks you're just here for the noise." When I left, she was still standing there, pretending to rearrange a shelf that didn't need rearranging. Outside, it had started raining. Not hard, just steady enough to blur the glass. I looked down and saw that she'd slipped a small note between the pages of the book I'd borrowed. It only said, "Quiet doesn't always mean calm." I didn't open the book again that night. I just held it, wondering if she knew how loud that silence had become. I went back the next day. I told myself it was to return the book early, but really, it was because I couldn't stop thinking about the note. She looked up when I placed it on the counter. "Didn't take you long to finish," she said. "I didn't," I admitted. "I just liked the ending." She smiled, faintly. "You didn't even reach the middle." Her tone wasn't accusing. It was amused, like she saw through me but didn't mind. She gestured toward a small table near the window. "You can wait there," she said. "I'll find something else for you." It wasn't part of her job to pick books for me, but she walked into the aisles anyway, fingers running along the spines until she stopped. When she came back, she handed me a worn copy of The Remains of the Day. "Try this," she said. "It's about restraint." Her eyes lingered on mine for a second too long. We ended up sitting there together, her cataloging old books, me pretending to read. She had a thermos of tea and offered me some. I hesitated, then took it. The warmth of the metal surprised me. "It's mint," she said. "Helps me stay awake." I took a sip. "You work late." She nodded. "My daughter's at her father's most nights. Quiet suits me better." I don't know what surprised me more, that she told me that, or how casually she said it. "Divorced?" I asked, before I could stop myself. She looked out the window. For a while now. Long enough that people stopped asking if I'm okay. Something in her voice, dry, even, made me want to fill the silence. But I didn't. I just watched her thumbs circle the rim of her cup. The rain had started again, tapping gently against the glass. The sound made everything slower. She glanced at me. "You're quiet today." "You told me to be," I said. That made her laugh, a quiet, restrained sound. Then she shook her head. "You're too young to listen this well." I wanted to tell her she didn't feel old to me, that her calmness made everything else feel less frantic. But instead, I just said, "Maybe I like quiet people." She didn't answer, just adjusted her glasses, then reached for a stack of books, our hands brushing briefly. It wasn't much, just skin meeting for half a heartbeat, but it felt like she'd handed me something unspoken. Later, when I left, I saw her reflection in the glass door. She was watching me go, still holding that same cup of tea. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. And maybe because I realized, standing there in the rain, that I was already too far in to pretend it didn't mean anything. The next week, she wasn't there. A different librarian sat behind the desk, younger, cheerful, too quick with smiles. I asked about her before I could stop myself. "She's off today," the girl said. "Family thing, I think." I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. The room felt colder without her stillness in it. I stayed anyway, sitting by the same window where she usually worked, flipping through pages I couldn't focus on. When she returned a few days later, she seemed different. Hair still damp from the rain, eyes tired. "You found your book," she said softly, noticing it in my hands. "I didn't read much," I said. Didn't feel right without the usual commentary. That earned me a small look, the kind that hides warmth behind restraint. "You shouldn't depend on me for that," she said. She started sorting books again, quick and deliberate. I watched the way her fingers trembled slightly when she reached for the top shelf. I stood up to help without thinking. "I've got it," I said, reaching beside her. We both froze when my hand brushed hers. Neither of us moved. Then she pulled back, slow. "You shouldn't," she murmured. "People might misunderstand." "Would they be wrong?" I asked. My voice sounded quieter than I meant it to. She didn't answer, just exhaled, long, steady, and turned toward the desk. A student came by then, asking about printing. The interruption felt almost cruel. I stepped aside, pretending to browse. Watching her switch back to professionalism, her voice calm, measured. I wondered if she'd practiced that distance for years. When the student left, I walked back. "You okay?" She gave a faint laugh. "You ask that a lot. Because you never really answer." Her eyes flicked toward mine, then away. "You shouldn't make a habit of noticing people who don't belong to you." The sentence hung there, too honest to ignore. I wanted to say something, anything that would make it less final. But words felt useless. Instead, I placed the book on the counter and said quietly, "I'll return it later." "Take your time," she said. But her tone was off, too even. I nodded, turning to leave. Then she added, almost under her breath, "You always come back anyway." I stopped, turned slightly. "You want me to?" Her mouth parted, like she might answer, then closed again. A pause. She looked down at the desk, fingers tracing the edge of a paper she wasn't really reading. The silence between us stretched, full of everything we couldn't say. When I finally left, she reached out, just lightly, and straightened my collar, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't a touch meant to linger, but it did. Outside, I kept walking, pulse in my throat, every step echoing with the thought. She didn't say no. It was almost closing time when I found her sitting outside the library, coat draped over her arm, watching the streetlights flicker on. I hesitated, then sat down beside her. She didn't look surprised. "You wait for me now?" "I was just passing by," I said. "Of course." A small smile. "You pass by a lot." The air smelled of wet concrete. Somewhere nearby, a bike chain clicked. We sat there, side by side, saying nothing for a while. I noticed she wasn't wearing her glasses tonight. Without them, she looked softer, younger somehow. But her eyes looked tired in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep. "I thought you might not come back," she said suddenly. I shrugged. "You told me not to." And yet, her voice cracked a little on that word, like she hadn't meant to let it show. A car passed, its headlights brushing her face. I saw her blink, look away, fold her arms tight. "You shouldn't make this harder," she said. "What is this?" She exhaled. "Whatever it is that keeps you here when you should be somewhere else." I wanted to tell her there wasn't anywhere else. That lately, silence didn't feel right unless she was in it. But instead, I said, "You don't seem to mind when I'm around." That made her laugh quietly. No humor in it, just weariness. "That's the problem." A pause. Then softer. "You're kind. You look at me like I'm still someone to look at. And it's cruel, in a way." I turned toward her. Cruel? To let myself enjoy it. The streetlight buzzed above us. I could see her fingers gripping her coat, knuckles pale. "You think I'm playing with you?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "That's what makes it worse." She finally looked at me, and for a second, I saw something break. Not dramatically, but quietly, like a door left ajar after years of being locked. "You remind me of a version of myself I don't trust anymore," she said. "Hopeful. Reckless. Believing people see more than they really do." "I do see you," I said, almost a whisper. She shut her eyes, like that was too much. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because if you mean it, I don't know what I'll do." We sat there, the world shrinking to the space between our knees, our breaths sinking without intention. A part of me wanted to reach out, to touch her wrist, to tell her it wasn't just attraction, it was something gentler and more dangerous. But her eyes opened again, steady now, watching me like she was memorizing the restraint itself. "Go home," she said quietly. I nodded, but neither of us moved. The rain started again, soft, tentative. She looked at it, then at me. And then, that pause again. The kind that asks a question neither of us dared to answer. She stopped being there. At first, I thought it was just her day off again. Then another day passed. Then a week. The new librarian said she was on leave, the kind of phrase that sounded temporary but didn't explain anything. The library felt wrong without her. Too bright. Too loud. Even the chairs seemed to scrape harder against the floor. I tried to read, but my mind kept filling in the quiet she used to leave behind. I sent her a message once. A simple, "Hope you're doing okay." Typed it. Reread it. Deleted it. I couldn't figure out what I had the right to say. On the 5th day, I saw her, not at the library, but at the cafe across the street. She was sitting by the window, talking to a man. Older. Confident. He laughed at something she said, and she smiled. That small, polite kind of smile she used to give me before it meant something else. I didn't go in. Just stood there, watching her stir her coffee slowly, eyes half lowered like she was somewhere else. Maybe she was. Maybe she'd gone back to wherever she'd learned how to guard her silences. The next day, I didn't show up either. That became its own habit, avoiding the library, taking longer routes home, pretending I didn't notice how the evenings felt heavier. I told myself she'd made her choice, that maybe she'd realized what we were doing wasn't fair, that I was young, and she had her own life to rebuild. But none of that helped. One night, I walked past the library after closing. The windows were dark, except for her desk lamp, still on. She was there, alone, sorting returns. I stopped outside, half hidden by the reflection on the glass. She looked up once, maybe at a sound, maybe at nothing, and for a second, I thought she saw me. But she didn't move, just pressed a hand to her temple, eyes closed. That small gesture, tired, resigned, told me more than words would have. She wasn't angry. She was protecting herself. The next morning, I tried writing again. Not to her, just to say it somewhere. I opened a blank message and typed, "I keep thinking about that night on the bench. You said you didn't trust the hopeful version of yourself. I think I saw her anyway." Then I stopped. The blinking cursor looked like it was waiting for me to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. Someone who pressed send, or someone who let silence stay sacred. I didn't send it, just left it there, unsent, saved in drafts like a truth that wasn't ready to live outside me yet. When I closed my phone, I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I saw her again by accident. A week later, late evening. The library lights were off, but she was locking the front door, coat pulled close, hair loose around her face. I almost kept walking. Then she turned, saw me, and froze. Neither of us spoke at first. Just the sound of the key turning, the click echoing down the empty street. "You're out late," she said finally, voice soft, cautious. "So are you." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. I was catching up on returns. "You always are," I said. A faint smile tugged at her mouth, but it didn't last. The air between us held all the words we hadn't said, the message I hadn't sent, the night she didn't explain. "I saw you at the cafe," I said. "With someone." Her expression didn't change much. Just a quiet inhale. "My ex-husband. We were discussing our daughter's school. Nothing more." I looked down at the pavement. "You don't owe me an explanation." "No," she said gently. "But you asked." Silence again. The kind that feels like it could tip either way, into something tender or something final. "I stopped coming," I said. I noticed. Her eyes softened, but her posture stayed guarded, hands tight around her bag strap. "You're young," she murmured. "And I'm careful. Those two things don't mix easily." I nodded. "I know." Then, after a pause, "But it didn't feel wrong. Being near you." She looked away, toward the rain gutter dripping slowly onto the curb. "That's how it starts." I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. "You make it sound dangerous." "It is," she said simply. We stood there, half shielded by the awning, the smell of rain between us. I could see her thinking, weighing something unseen. Then she stepped closer, just enough that her shoulder brushed mine. "You should know," she said quietly. "I haven't felt noticed like that in a long time. You made me remember something I'd put away." Her voice trembled on remember. I wanted to touch her hand, just lightly, but stopped myself. "You made me see something too," I said. "That calm doesn't always mean peace." That made her look up. Her eyes glimmered, tired but alive in a way I hadn't seen before. For a moment, no one moved. The rain slowed. The world waited. Then she smiled. A small, unsteady one, and said, "You always talk like you're older than you are. Maybe that's your fault." She laughed, quiet and real this time. Then, almost without thinking, she reached out and straightened my collar again. The same small gesture from before, but this time her hand stayed for just a second longer. "Thank you," she said, "for not saying too much." I nodded. For what it's worth, I would have stayed quiet anyway. We stood there, still, until she whispered, barely audible, "Okay." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't an ending. Just okay. And somehow that was enough. A year slipped by in the slow way time does when you stop waiting for anything to happen. The library changed hours, the lights replaced with warmer bulbs. They added a self-checkout machine that no one really used. I still came by sometimes, out of habit more than hope. Usually around 8:47 a.m., the hour I'd always found her there, before the place filled with noise. And she was still there. Most mornings. Her hair shorter now, glasses still slipping the same way, that same silver bracelet catching the early light. Things were different between us, but quietly so. We'd found a rhythm, nods, soft greetings, brief exchanges that didn't need explanations. Sometimes, she'd slide a cup of tea toward me when I sat by the window, unspoken permission in the gesture. Meant always. She'd stop telling me to be quiet. Maybe because she knew I didn't come to talk anymore. I came to listen, not to her voice, but to the way silence softened around her. Every now and then, she'd sit across from me while sorting returns, and we'd share small pieces of our lives. Her daughter starting art school, my new job downtown, the endlessness of growing older in a city that never slowed down. Once, I asked if she still saw her ex. She smiled, tired but peaceful. "We talk," she said. "It's easier now." I stopped expecting him to understand what I never said. I nodded. Maybe that's just getting older. She looked at me for a moment. Or maybe it's learning not to hold on to noise. The rain came again one afternoon, like it always seemed to with us. The windows blurred, and the scent of wet paper filled the air. I helped her move a box of donated books, and when I handed her the last one, our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled back this time. She looked up, half smiling. You still don't read much when you're here. I do, I said. Just not the books. The words made her shake her head, but she didn't look away. There was something lighter about her now, not unscarred, but freer. Maybe both of us had learned how to exist inside the pause instead of trying to fill it. Before I left that day, she placed a slip of paper in the book I borrowed. I didn't open it until later, sitting on the same bench where we'd once almost crossed a line. Her handwriting was the same, neat, deliberate. Quiet doesn't always mean calm. Sometimes, it just means understanding. I folded the note and put it in my wallet. Not as a reminder of what almost happened, but of what did. We'd found something steadier than confession. Something real. Not a love story people talk about, but one that stayed. And somehow that was enough.